One, two, 1, 2, 3, 4.
And he's a music journalist. So tell us tell us first off, before we go into the interview, how you two connected.
He's got a son called Will Black, and his son used to come to the gigs and devises. And he was in an emo band. I've forgotten what they were called, but they're a proper emo band. But actually, Will went on to be a superb writer like his dad. He got a superb taste in music, but got a superb insight as well. I think if you sort of live in that environment, you can't help have it rub off on you. So Will is someone that I respect hugely, but obviously his dad's the business, so hence his dad.
My teenage years were spent in a town called Pennycook outside Edinburgh. So my first gigs would have been, I was in a band there as well. I was the so-called vocalist. I think vocalist is one of those words that means you can't actually sing, but you can make vocal noises.
Yes, not the singer.
Yes, exactly. I was in a band there with some friends at school, and we used to go to see gigs at Pennycook Town Hall, where we would see exotic bands like The Jury.
Oh.
I dare say none of your viewers or listeners or whatever will have ever heard of them. And the Ceiling Light Machine, who were a psychedelic band from Hawick in the Scottish borders. And that was the kind of thing that we did. And in those days, the town hall, it's fascinating looking back on it. The town hall was the venue in Pennycook. But when I think back on it, the bands could really, they only played sort of 2 or 3 chords at best. But the young people, of which I was one, honestly, they sat on opposite sides of the hall. The girls sat on one side of the hall and the boys sat on the other side of the hall. And then when the music started, they could meet in the middle, and if they got on well, they would dance in the middle of the floor. And the other thing that was always memorable was that when the bands played, nobody danced. The dancing only took place when the DJ came on and played records.
So what did they do?
And the band you stood and gawped at, because by this time it was, I guess we're into the late 60s, and the bands were getting more kind of prog.
Right. Okay.
So whereas 50s and early 60s bands were there to entertain you and help you to dance.
Yeah.
By the time of late 69, you had to listen to the band, man.
Right.
And,
okay. And wig out and maybe.
And wig out, exactly.
Yeah.
Not in Pennycook Town Hall, you didn't. But yeah, I mean, things had changed by that point. So it was the beginning of the prog era. Sure. Which I hated personally. But after that, I moved into Edinburgh, continued playing in bands, then eventually moved down to London, where I worked in the civil service in Whitehall as what I like to describe as a Whitehall Sultan of Spin. I was in the press office. Wow. Dealing with Scottish ministers and things like that, and I didn't enjoy it because politics is not my thing, but it gave me the grounding in press work and in dealing with journalists. So when I left there, I was able to move to the CBS Records press office.
Amazing.
Which
you always had a passion for music. Always, you listened to it. So when you moved to London,
absolutely. I grew up, my sister and I would sing harmonies to Everly Brothers songs and things like, So I guess my musical, and my parents were huge fans of Dean Martin, and so I just grew up listening to popular music. And it's still much the same, isn't it? I mean, it hasn't really changed dramatically, apart from maybe the arrival of rap and the arrival of electronic music in the 70s. They kind of changed things a bit, but essentially you're still largely talking about a small number of people and a few instruments and singing songs to make people happy.
So, so obviously getting a job at CBS must have been like a dream come true.
It was, yeah. Being a press officer in the civil service in Whitehall was interesting because I got to go in and out of Parliament and stuff like that. But I wasn't really attached to the idea of that. But I managed to, I conned the people at CBS into thinking I knew something about music, and they got me in, and I discovered right away that the difference between government press office and private press office, a record company press office, is that in the government press office, you're trying to stop people learning things.
Yeah, right.
And in a record company press office, you're trying to tell people things about people they're not really terribly interested in. So I was assigned a bunch of artists, and that was kind of a downside to it, because you would be assigned Ted Nugent, who's a heavy metal guitarist,
yeah,
plus Tammy Wynette, who's a country singer. Plus,
actually, you sent me a wonderful picture of you and Tammy Wynette, so we're going to drop that into the video so that we can see it.
Oh, that's good.
What a great shot! What a great picture!
Oh yeah.
I mean,
well, we did lots of these. I mean, I think that was a signing shot, if I remember rightly. She'd come into the country, she'd signed to CBS, and we needed a picture to tell the media that we'd done this thing. You know, she was absolutely charming. She wouldn't leave a gig. I mean, I never liked her music, but she wouldn't leave a gig without signing autographs for every fan at the stage door. She was absolutely lovely.
But, but looking back, she's a colossus in country and sort of folk music. She is huge.
Yeah, Tammy and Dolly.
Yeah. Did you know at the time that you were dealing with people of that stature? Did you appreciate it? Did you understand it?
I don't think I did appreciate it. You know, when you're that young, I must have been in my early 20s, I suppose, you just accept what happens to you. You know, you think, oh, I'd love to work in a rock and roll venue or whatever, like you're doing. I'd like to do that. And then suddenly it happens to you and you can't quite believe that it's happening. I mean, one of the most extraordinary things that happened to me was I had grown up listening to the Beach Boys, and I had loved the Beach Boys. And lots of my contemporaries railed against me for loving the Beach Boys because they wore stripy shirts, and they just looked a bit gormless, really. But I had loved that. They did. Their image was dreadful, not as bad as Paul Revere and the Raiders, but but when I got to CBS, the Beach Boys were just about to sign to CBS. And I can remember going into a meeting with my head of press, Jonathan Morrish, at that time, and they were trying to decide who would take on the Beach Boys, because it was a big thing for the label. Nobody wanted to work with the Beach Boys. Really? Because they were, by this point, early 70s, they were regarded as totally naff.
Right.
They'd had all their hits and everything, and really their only big hits in the UK were Good Vibrations and Help Me Rhonda and things like that. But they were much bigger in America than they ever were here. So when they come to CBS, nobody wanted to work with the Beach Boys, and I'm sitting there going, yes, I'll work with the Beach Boys. Can I have the Beach Boys? So about 3 days after arriving at CBS, I was the Beach Boys press officer.
Wow. What a start.
It was quite extraordinary, yeah. But, as I say, nobody else in the company gave a hoot about them. They were a big deal in America, where CBS was based. But in England, the move was on to launch British artists. Like we had The Clash and people like that. And we had a host of smaller bands like the Sinceros and After the Fire and people like that, and a Dutch band called Grupo Sportivo, who were excellent. We were trying to launch our own thing. And for me, just the idea of being the Beach Boys press officer was just beyond my wildest dreams.
I mean, I'm struggling to believe, or to be in that mindset where somebody would say, oh, they're old hat. I mean, even pop bands now that are old hat, people would still chew your arm off for. Even like, I don't know, the Spice Girls, they've already had their hits, they're not going to do it again, but they want to come back, it would be big news.
Yeah, I think there's much more respect among the younger generation for older artists now, and possibly too much respect for older artists. I've heard you yourself say that you know, why are young people so interested in going to see cover bands when there are young people making really interesting new music?
Yeah, it's very true. It's something we're currently experiencing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, one of my big thrills at CBS, again, sorry, harping on about the Beach Boys, was going to the Reading Festival, and before the gig, I had to go backstage and into their dressing room, and they were literally sitting around singing a cappella, singing what was then their current hit called Lady Linda, and I was just standing there getting a private a private Beach Boys concert in their back room, and it ended, and I said, "Hi, it's me, it's Johnny from CBS," and Carl Wilson looked over and he said, "Hi, Johnny, we're just singing fools." And that, I mean, that is what they were. I mean, they were like the Bee Gees in that they'd grown up singing together. They'd been taught how to sing harmonies. And that's what they enjoyed doing more than anything. And after that, when they went on stage, Carl actually, me and my wife were sitting out front, and Carl actually waved from the stage of Reading and said, "Hi, Johnny."
Oh, very cool.
So that was so cool. I mean, moment of fame.
Just to lead us out, we asked you to pick a song. What have you picked for us?
Well, it's a bit arrogant, but I do. when you write songs, you do want people to hear them.
Of course.
So I have a song of mine. I've written about 40 odd songs. I have a song of mine called "This Is My Moon," and I'd quite like to choose that.
But do you want to just briefly tell us about what the song is, or is it a mystery?
The song is the idea of "This Is My Moon." Was walking up on Salisbury Plain one night, walking the dog probably, and I looked up and I saw the moon and I thought, wonderful. It is. I mean, looking at the sky always gets me thinking, how fantastic that we live on this rock in the middle of space, and we're tiny and we're nothing, and we've got this other rock spinning around us. And I just thought, but it felt like it was my moon that night. You know, I was the only person on the plane, and I thought, this is my moon, and these are my stars, and that's the chorus: is "This is my moon, and these are my stars."
Hannah and her sister were out together, walking arm in arm. Her sister says to Hannah, "You know, I think that you're my lucky charm. Of all the places I have been, and all the things I've seen in before could not be found. So every night the show would end, and she would go and find her friends again. 'Cause nothing quite compares with sharing what you've got with those who knew you when. This is my moon, and these are my stars, and I wanna be right where they are. This is my moon, and these are my stars, and I wanna be right where they are, right where they are.
Tell us where you are, because I think you're in your basement, and I think I've been there before, and it's an incredible space.
I am. This here is my basement where I have worked for the last 20, 25 years. I don't know if I turn the camera around like that, does that help?
Yeah, I can. We're seeing it all. We're seeing it all. Go the other way.
And these here in the right behind me, these are my diaries.
Personal
where
diaries.
where my fist is, personal diaries, yeah,
Wow.
which I've been keeping since about 1974.
Oh, incredible.
And, anybody that wants to write in them can write in them, but I'm the main writer. And then these are all rock and roll encyclopedias and what have you.
And I have had the
Music.
pleasure of the tour of your basement. And I
Yeah.
have seen you have pretty much every printed book on the Beatles. Is that correct?
Yes, it's not. I mean, you know, I have great admiration for the Beatles. They wouldn't be my favorite band of all time, but yeah, people seem to have an unlimited appetite for books about the Beatles. So I have shelves which must be 12 feet long. One of the shelves has nothing on it but Beatles books.
You would have thought by now there's nothing else that can be written about them. or
What can
said
be
about them.
what more can be said? Yes. Paul McCartney is a nice chap. I can confirm that. I've interviewed him and he's a lovely chap. But yeah, what else can you say?
We would normally say to somebody, the guest, like, what's been your most favourite thing you've ever achieved? But I mean, you've got a whole host of things you've already gone through. Surely that can't be beaten.
Being the Beach Boys press officer was pretty special. But again, you know, as I went, I should. Can I relate a Clash anecdote?
Oh no, please do, please do.
Because when I arrived at CBS, I was, you know, a little ex-hippie, basically. And I can remember going into the CBS press office, and Joe Strummer popped his head round the door, and he said, "Hello, you're the new press officer, aren't you?" I said, "Yes, I'm Johnny Black." And he said, "I'm just going out to get sandwiches. Would you like a sandwich?" And Joe Strummer, this horrid punk rocker, went out and bought sandwiches for us, and really nice guy.
Wow. I mean, yeah, I mean, obviously his foundation, his legacy lives on to this day, but you don't achieve that without being a super top person. So I believe you sincerely.
Yeah, most of that's the interesting thing about musicians. You'll have found this doing what you do. Most of them are very, very nice people.
Most of them are, yeah.
Yeah, you know, the only ones I can remember who I did not take to was Tammy, not Tammy, I like Tammy, the New Seekers.
Oh, really?
Didn't like, they would just seem to be business, you know, they just seem to be, didn't like them at all.
Oh, well, no, we get it, you know, money is to be made, but at the same time, we can do it in a nice, legitimate way. Yeah,
let's hope so. Let's hope so.
So, so what brought you from London to Devizes? You say you've lived in Devizes for 25 years, so it's the mid-90s, it's the height of Britpop. Why did you come to Devizes?
I did get away from Britpop. Not a movement I was very fond of.
No, fair enough.
I've always leaned towards America anyway, at the best of times. But well, in between, when I left CBS, my wife Carol was working at the BBC. She was making programs like Points of View and things like that.
Okay.
And so she was earning enough money to support me while I got established as a music journalist, which I did by dint of walking around to various offices and saying, please let me write for you. And luckily got into Smash Hits, which was just starting then. I don't know if you remember Smash Hits.
Yeah, I remember Smash Hits. It was the pop magazine.
Little pop magazine, and a very clever idea put together by David Hepworth and Mark Ellen, who people might remember presenting the whistle test and things like that. And they had this very clever idea that the rock press had become too much stuck up its own posterior.
Probably true.
And they wouldn't write about successful artists. And the Smash Hits guys thought, well, hang on a second. There are millions of people who love these successful artists.
Yeah, sure.
They love their Phil Collinses and their Rod Stewarts and whatever you think of them. Lots of people love them, but the music press wouldn't write about them. So they had this idea: let's start a little pop magazine, and it was phenomenally successful. And
so what year was that?
That would have been the early 80s, I think.
Yeah, okay.
The late 70s. But I'm trying to think who I interviewed for Smash Hits. So it would have been Howard Jones, people like that, the Human League.
Oh, amazing.
So yeah, it was that era. And one of the staff at Smash Hits was a young fella called Neil Tennant.
No way.
Yeah. And Neil, of course, left Smash Hits and went off to form the Pet Shop Boys, and everybody's going, Neil, daft bugger.
Yeah, sure.
You daft fellow, Neil. And
we're loose laughing now.
And he showed us, yeah, absolutely. So, but then Smash Hits birthed Q magazine and Mojo magazine, because basically the audience got older.
Yes.
And Dave Hepworth and Mark Allen and the people who started the magazine thought, hang on, we could actually have an older magazine, a magazine for older fans who also will be prepared to read about Rod Stewart, whereas the NME and the Melody Maker just didn't take that kind of stuff seriously. No. So, those magazines were very clever commercial moves.
Well, that's brand new information to me, because I did not know that's where they came from. But when I worked at Discovery Records and I was doing all the marketing and press and all the rest of it, I used to Q and Mojo were big hitters for us. And I got a lot of success from Mojo, particularly Mojo. I went to their offices in London and I used to buy them all biscuits and go and have coffee with them and then pitch records to them. Basically, you filled them up with bar fudge, they would write anything you liked.
Exactly. That's how the music industry works, isn't it? Yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah. They were an amazing team, because they had the right idea they had respect for music and they enjoyed music, but they weren't going to forget who their audience was.
Sure.
Important.
Very, very important. Okay, so let's just come to present day then. So have you retired from music journalism, or are you still keeping your toe in?
I retired about 2 years ago. I still maintain my website, my kind of rock and roll website. God, that shows how old I am, but I still call it rock and roll. I still maintain the website. I still try to keep myself up to date with what's going on. But of course, at my age, it's mostly who's just died.
Oh, mate.
It is. You get old, and what you do is you talk about how ill you are and which of your favorite artists died most recently.
But do you still go to gigs? Do you still enjoy music?
Not really. I mean, yes, I still enjoy music. I've been to so many gigs in my lifetime that unless I hear an artist doing something and I think, oh, I'd like to see them, I won't go out on spec.
Right.
But I do still see. I even write my own songs. I mean, so I still love doing music. Still love
We'll
doing
come to that in a
music.
second, but sort of to wrap it up, as it were. Just tell us about your website and about where people can access the information. Tell us more about the website. Is it Wiltshire focus, or is it Southwest focus, or is it just...
No. My website is called www.musicdays.com.
Yeah.
And it started because when I was at Q and at Mojo, I used to do a lot of historical features for them because that's what they were interested in. And I suddenly realized we had these things called computers, and I could log all the information that I was using to do a thing called Time Machine for Mojo, which I started, which I was invited to start, and I got it going. And that was kind of a historical thing about what happened in any particular month. So I realized
this day in 1956.
Yes,
so
exactly, on this day. And I then I was putting all that stuff into my computer because I thought, oh, this could be useful to me in the future. Wow. And then eventually a friend of mine said, you do realize you could turn this into a website.
I mean, you were playing the long game there without even realizing it.
Yeah, yeah. So it's up there now, and you can go in there and you can pick any day from musical history, or you can pick a location. You could pick Devizes, or you could pick London or San Francisco.
I have used it.
Yep. And basically you can search music history in lots of different ways through that website.
Well, that's incredible.
It's big.
And I can't thank you enough for all the effort you've ever gone to, because I've definitely read a lot of your work in the past, even without even realizing it. So
right to the end. Right to the end.
Right to the end every time. But then to have you on my doorstep in Devizes when I was doing gigs was just, an absolute pleasure and a real, a godsend. You turn up and you start doing these things, and things exist and you don't realize, and they all start coming out, and it's just wonderful. And I've been doing it 20 years now, and what we have in certainly in this area, it's quite special. So you're a part of that. So thank you ever so much coming to tell us all about your music. I think we could probably chat all day, to be honest, Johnny. We could probably turn this into a daily radio session, talking about your history and your anecdotes. And
we can think about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's another...
I imagine you've got a few anecdotes of your own to tell by now.
I've got some wonderful stories I could tell. Some of them probably wouldn't get past press. I probably wouldn't be allowed to say them. But yes, I have got some wonderful stories.
Well, maybe we'll do this the other way around then. I'll interview you one time.
Okay, then we can do that.
What a lovely chap.
He certainly lived a life, hasn't he?